here so we can see me. What's up, Corey?
Hey, what's going on?
How are you doing?
Awesome. I just finished the workout, so if I'm like flush and breathing heavy, it's normal, but it's a little more than usual. So
now I'm so out of shape. If I'm blushing and breathing heavy, it means I walked up 5 steps. So I got to get back in that flow where it means that it's good.
Right. Let's go.
For everyone who's joining us, I've got Corey Proctor, former NFL player, husband to Megan, and dad to Grace, his daughter. Played for Detroit Lions, Dolphins, Cowboys. I went to the University of Montana. 42 consecutive starts, I believe, with Montana, but from Washington, and current owner of Pro Wealth Management. So, Corey, welcome. What did you do for your workout? I'm curious. What do you do these days?
Oh man, I'll do a whole mix of things. I'll do the meathead lift a lot, but today I like CrossFit a lot. Something just to keep me moving. And so today I had a buddy came over and we did a little bit of we did some squats and then hit a 20, 18, 16, 14, all the way down to 2 of wall balls, which is hitting the target with a 20-pound wall ball, and then burpees on the other side up. So it took us a little under 25 minutes. So chubby bunny. I'm breathing.
I like it. I love it. I'm a big fan of wall ball. That is a favorite pastime. I also like hills. Burpees, I don't mind them. Drew Crowder, Dr. Eric, welcome. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to do like a quick prayer, and I don't want to jump into it just as we welcome people.
Let's do it.
All right, Lord, thank you so much for Corey joining us today. Thank you for all the skills and abilities that you've given him and the ways that he is blessing others by honoring the platform put before him. Pray that you continue to give him strength, not only in his faith, in being a husband and a dad, how he helps people with their financial assets, but also in how he's serving the kingdom. And I pray that you help keep his body physically healthy as he's crushing it to continue to do what he does best. Thank you, Lord. Amen. All right.
Amen.
Friends, again, Corey Proctor. So I read something in your bio that I just want to jump out and ask you about. You were a drummer in a metal band?
Yes.
Tell me about that. Wait, and you're on VH1 too. Like, I had no idea.
I did, yeah. So I came up as a drummer. It was funny because like 5th grade when they tromped the whole class through the little tiny room full of instruments to see what you want to play. I wanted to play the sax, but I couldn't make any noise. And so they're like, all right, here, take some drumsticks, go beat a drum. You can do that. So, I grew up being in the band, love that. And then when I got here to the Cowboys, Mark Colombo was our right tackle here for a long time. He's now the O-line coach in New York with the Giants. And we're just shooting the breeze, and we both worked really hard in the weight room, so we became friends. And all of a sudden, he started talking about his band back in Chicago. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so then he had a kit in his house, and so we started jamming a bunch, and then Leonard Davis ended up joining up as the bassist, and then he had a buddy who was kind of the real musician of the band, and just stirred up a whole bunch of stuff, and we ended up, got a lot of attention off of something we were screwing around with.
So the best things are born out of pure fun.
Totally. And it was the coolest thing because all of a sudden we started getting invites and turned down mostly everything because we couldn't do a whole lot. But one of them was the VH1 Classic Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. And the other guys turned it down. And I was the only one who wanted to do it. And it was the coolest thing in the world because they treated me, we go to the Key Club in LA, and they treated me like I'm one of the rock stars. So I'm sitting there hanging out with Kip Winger, Mark Hudson, Lita Ford, Rudy Sarzo, Kenny Aronoff.
What an amazing experience.
Incredible. So it's pretty awesome.
Do you still drum? Do you still practice?
Once in a while. Most of my time is taken up other places. But I've had a lot of people go like, man, you need to go try out for the worship team at church. But I'm like, they put so much time into their craft, and I wouldn't be able to serve it justice, I wouldn't be able to commit. And so I would love to because it's a huge passion of mine. It's actually a big part of how I came to faith. But because worship is huge to me, but I love it, but I wouldn't be able to commit the time right now.
Man, and I love how you said that was a big part of your faith journey. Like, let's talk about that. Let's dive in. Tell me more about how you came to your faith.
Well, I was raised Mormon, and so it's a little touchy subject with some family members still. But I tell you, we went through, I guess, kind of coming out of football. I got hurt right from, I'm telling, without giving the whole story first, but I got hurt. And so a lot of people, when you go through this transition phase of now I'm coming out of something that I've always been my whole life, you're like, what am I supposed to be, right? And what am I supposed to do now? And so coming through that, had some angst and some different feelings about that, had a belief in God, but wasn't really activated in it. And then what happened is I'm middle of three boys, and my younger brother ended up losing his son. Him and his wife lost their son to cancer, and so that was a real heavy place for us. And so him and I, we kind of went to this "F you God" place, and so we were there for a long time. And we ended up getting a buddy of mine, Blake Bevan, who was a pitcher for the Rangers and the Mariners. We came real close with him and his wife, and they were over one night, invited us over to church. And so we walk into Milestone Church, which is a non-denominational, and I'm like full up, this is how this ain't how church is supposed to be. I don't care about God anyway. He can go jump off the roof, and I'll handle my life. And but it was funny because we walk in, and so the pastors are like, "Hey, good to meet you." I'm like, "Shut up, don't talk to me." and so they're like, "Hey, we'll take you."
Full bill.
Full on. And so we go in, and I'm holding Grace. She was, I don't know if she was even one yet at that time.
So this is all after football, after your career.
Right. All after football. And so even during football, I went to some Sunday Bible studies with the team, but never really grasped it, right? Yeah. Never really got hit. And so, anyways, but we walked into service. I got Megan, I got Grace, and like basically ready to fight somebody. And it was about the second or third worship song that he totally lays a vision of my nephew on me, and it wasn't this any sort of audible words, but it was this overwhelming feeling of I got him. He's good. And so I don't say that was a moment. It wasn't a moment where, hey, can I give my life to Christ? But it brought the wall down enough to come back. Yeah. And so all of a sudden I got into this environment where God could work on me. In Romans, it talks about how do we gain faith? It's to hear the word and the word of Christ. And so now I'm in this environment where God can work on me. And thank goodness our pastor, he's a former offensive lineman from Baylor. And so he could speak my language. Yeah. And so he totally did this. And okay, I get into a small group, and I'm still quiet, still shut up at this point. I hadn't shared that story with anybody. And we get into the small group. They identify some leaders in the church and get into this leadership development group. And that's where they start pulling things out of me because I can hear other guys' testimonies. Yeah. And all of a sudden, this fire was lit up that wasn't there during football. And I've always been a smart guy, hard worker, been there when I was supposed to be there. But I wasn't any sort of consumer. So I remember Bill Parcells asked me, what is my thought process coming up to the line? And I couldn't tell you at all. But all of a sudden, when I got into this group, I couldn't explain how it was happening, but we were reading leadership books, and I started becoming a crazy consumer of anything I can get my hands on. And so it's leadership books. It was huge. And it wasn't just scriptural. It was scriptural. It was leadership. John Maxwell fan, huge fan of his. And I mean, finances. It was everything. And so all of a sudden, pastor gave me a push one day, and he started connecting scripturally with some huge principles that I already held high. And so he gave me a push one day and asked me, it's like, would you do it? And so, yeah. And I took the plunge, and kind of like most guys, once I decided to step off the cliff, I'm not coming back. And it's been amazing ever since.
So you're about half a decade into it then, a little more than that. Would that be about right? Just on fire? I love what you said about the intensity of football and stepping up to the line, because as athletes, I mean, it's such an overwhelming emotion that it's really hard to communicate and to explain. And to have an even bigger fire with God now than when you were on the field in NFL, it blows my mind. And that's his goodness. I also really like what you said about, like, someone spoke your language. A girl who led me to Christ, I felt like God put someone in my life who spoke my language. Like, she just got me. And it's like you switch channels, or I guess you flip ads now on social media. TV was more of a thing back then. But just even then, it was something that, like, I tuned into. You're like, wait, I can listen to this, and I want to, and so that's so good. So you played in 4 cities. Obviously, you're in Texas now, but what were, like, some of your great memories about the other cities that you played in?
Shoot, I remember it was a big culture shock to me. So what's cool now is anybody who's a non-believer, coming in, we can't explain a whole lot of things that go on in our life. And so becoming a believer, we talk about taking the blindfold off, essentially. And so now I can look back on moments in my life where I needed to be in certain areas. And so my first place, I came to Detroit. And so, okay, full Corey out front, right? I moved around a lot as a kid, but the high school I went to was basically Abercrombie and Fitch, okay? And and then Montana, University of Montana, I went to, we had a small number of black guys or any sort of minority on the team. Yeah. And so predominantly white. And then all of a sudden I go undrafted to Detroit, to the Lions, where all of a sudden it's predominantly black or another minority, right? Where I'm the minority in the locker room. And I'll tell you, I say this on purpose because we have a lot of these tensions going on. But this was a place, it was uncomfortable for me at first. And now I can look back on it, and God totally brought me through that. Look, I'm trying to expand your territory. I'm trying to make you bigger than what you are right now. And if I can't put you in a pond where you can't swim, then what are we doing this for? And so it was really cool, but I made some amazing friends there and totally broadened. And so I love Detroit, not the place I would choose to live, but I love Detroit. But but then got picked up in Dallas. We loved it here. And then Miami was a totally different place. I tell you what, the food there is incredible, but the heat there is a whole nother deal. And I can't stand that humidity.
We filmed in Miami for American Ninja Warrior once, and it was so interesting because I felt like all of the buildings were white, and I didn't want to touch any vehicles because I knew all of them probably cost more than my college education combined. It was just, it was very expensive, and I loved the culture, and that was exciting, but it was so hot in Miami. We did get to tour Dolphin Stadium, though, and that was, pretty exciting.
It's crazy. I mean, the humidity, it's hot here in Texas, right? But we went there, and it's either about to storm and the humidity's crazy, about to storm, or it's just stormed and the sun is coming out, steaming everything off. And so, like, the most I lost was 18 pounds in one practice.
Oh, my gosh. That's so much.
It's crazy.
I know.
So,
and had that been, you were an offensive lineman, and for everybody who doesn't know, traditionally it's a little bigger body boys. So what's that transition been like for you health-wise to go from an O-lineman to regular life? Because I've heard, obviously I don't know, but I've heard that can really be hard.
It's tough. Well, a lot of times you'll see guys go either way. One, they're like, I want to lose a ton, I'm done with it, or they stop force feeding to keep the weight on, or guys, they still stay the same way, but stop the work, and so now they inflate in a big way. I'm a mix of both. So I wanted to lose, and so at least I'm sitting about 280 plus right now. And I got down to 270 to climb Kilimanjaro 1 year, but the lineman appetite is still there. Like, I want to eat, baby, and I don't. You never not want to eat the whole pizza. So it's a struggle.
Oh man, I mean, I didn't even play football, although I do love football. But when I was done with track, I didn't really realize like the output that I was going for my calories and just even what I was doing. I mean, I was lifting in the weight room at 5:30 a.m. I had a busy day. I rode my bike to campus, and then I competed, and then I rode my bike home. And once I stopped track, I was like, wait a minute. I I really was burning a lot. So that transition can be tough, but I love it. Hey, Brandon, what's up? And I do want to stop for anybody who hasn't met Corey Proctor. Throw some questions in the comments down below. Former NFL player. Now, I read on your bio again that sports were also, they've just been such a huge part of the man that you are. How do you feel like they shaped you? You just talked a little bit about it in Detroit, but just in general.
Well, and Maggie, you know this stuff, and anybody who's knows this kind of, the locker room that's your sanctuary to a degree. And so, but what happened growing up, like 8 or 9 years old, my folks decided to split, and it, wasn't exactly happy, right? And so it was we moved around a lot. And so I was kind of the fat kid who went into the bag of Doritos really deep, right? And so I went to that. So we moved around so much that I've always been this outgoing kid, but I just kind of recluse just a little more. And the great thing about sports was it forced me into an environment to expand myself. And so all of a sudden, I talk about in 7th grade, the guy who invited me to play football for the first time, right? I thought he was going to beat me up because I've seen him beat some other dudes up. But the first guy invited me to play football, and what kind of impact that had in my life. So all of a sudden I can get into this environment where I can learn how to take coaching from somebody who's been down the line. I can learn how to work with people, not just individually, but work with people, right? And learn what sweat equity was, the duality of the mind and body, and how that works together and pushes each other. And then I say such a huge piece of sports for me that is totally applicable to our world right now is the ability to process your emotions at a fast pace.
Yeah.
And you know this, and not to say I don't get stuck in this at times, totally do, but we might be dealing with somebody difficult or a job or whatever, and how many people hang on to it for so many days or weeks, and it bleeds over into such a huge part of your life, or you start making decisions based off your emotions instead of your convictions. And so what was so great about that is, all right, in football or even in wrestling, you had a coach there. If you're getting emotional, you had a coach, you had a buddy typically there to grab you and kind of slap you in the face a little bit to get you to wise up, but because if you didn't process it fast enough, you let it pour over into the rest of your play. And so now the whole game goes to hell. And so, that's a huge piece. A lot of people ask, all right, knowing what you know about football, would you go back? Would you still do it? Or would you let your kids do it? And I said 100%.
Yeah.
Every time I got my wife from this game. I have relationships that are forever for this game. This, so much has been given to me. I don't care how I look. I want to be as healthy as long as possible, but the legacy and the impact that I leave and what I've gotten from that is going to be far greater than how I go out and how I leave.
I remember when I used to work for the Nebraska Athletic Department and got to design the football letter winners wall. And at that point, I'm from San Diego. I actually did not grow up in a sports home. I didn't play sports until I was 14. That was only because of a teacher. So I didn't watch football. And here I am. I moved to Nebraska. They love football here, if anybody doesn't know, and then ended up working for the athletic department. And I have to say, the moment I really, really, really fell in love with Nebraska football is that night we unveiled the letter winners wall. And I saw players of all generations at the wall, like arm in arm, holding each other. And there was this group of older farmers. You would have never expected these guys to have any sense of tear you'd ever see in a million years. But they huddled around each other and put their hands on the wall of their friend, their players, their teammates who had already passed, and they were weeping. And I was like, wow. And that, it just stuck out to me so much. And I was like, I want to do whatever I can to help this program grow, because it's such a bigger legacy than what's on the field, than any trophy that can ever be held up. It's the brotherhood of what they can do. So I just, echoing that, and just for anybody, I'd say, in a dream world, I would have been able to play football. I would have loved to, I think. But I want to jump into a little bit about what you do now. You do pro wealth management, and we're in a world that financially is in a little bit of chaos. Do you have any encouragement that you want to share with people from what you do now?
Absolutely. I mean, it's what I would love from this time is people to gain perspective about their own life. And it's, look, there's some basics that goes across the board in relationships, finances, and wherever you want it to be. But there's some basics that you need to stand on in your convictions. You need to identify like what your convictions are. What are pillars in your life that you will never sway from when bad times come? And so what people don't anticipate are the bad times. And so if you've essentially built yourself up to be bulletproof, especially financially, for bad times, you last through them and you prosper through them in a whole different degree than somebody who hasn't, and they've been blindsided all of a sudden by a bad situation, right? And so what I love the perspective to be is, all right, not what is our government doing to screw us right now? Not what did God do to screw us? Why, what did my boss screw me by laying me off or this or that, right? We didn't get the PPP loan. We didn't get what we wanted or whatever. Right? Yeah. It's not any of these. It's like, okay, analyze the situation for real, right? How was I affected? One, why did that happen? Don't blame anything. Take as much ownership as you can and say, like, okay,
that's so good.
Right. And so, okay, out of this, am I winning coming out of this or in this season right now during this pandemic? And I can tell you a lot of people are winning right now. There's a lot of people that are hurt, but a lot of people are winning. And it's not just the rich people like so many of the headlines want you to hear. All right. There's a lot of people, clients that I have that are killing it in their jobs sitting at home because they're able to work around the problem instead of sit there and stare at it and complain.
Well, it's like we talked about earlier, adaptability. Boyd Epley, who started the NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association, used to be one of my bosses, and he told me, it was Maggie, the great ones adjust. And that was he'd say it every day. He had it in our offices, the great ones adjust, the great ones adjust. And that you mentioned it earlier and you're highlighting it now. And that's just it. The great ones adjust.
Huge. It's huge. And this, what I love about the financial piece is that bad finances are a symptom of something greater. Right? And it's not that you don't have the money. It's because you didn't manage it. Right. And that's our responsibility. That's our piece in this is to be able to manage the business of our own life. And a lot of it, I don't think it's taught in our schools necessarily very well. So it's up to us to go out and get it. And so especially during this time, here's the problem with this being locked down. And this is, wherever you're at with this pandemic about opening up the economies, we have to open up the economies. We have to. And even if you're against it, I'll tell you why. What's the problem is we have right now close-ish to 40% of our nation that lives paycheck to paycheck and doesn't have $500 in the bank. Okay, let's talk about something else. Half of our nation, 50%, we have a 50% divorce rate in our nation right now. Number one cited reason is money. Okay, so what starts happening when we've cut off people's income, or your income is cut off and you haven't done anything to change it or to find other ways around it somehow. And it's not easy. Everybody has varying degrees, okay? But if you don't do it, all of a sudden, divorces skyrocket, abuse cases skyrocket, criminal rates skyrocket because you back me into a corner. I'm going to go find a way to feed my family or myself. And so we have to get people back to work. But what I'd love for people to do is, okay, me as a financial advisor, I deal with the securities, the markets. And so you might have somebody who, all right, I have my 401k or a brokerage account or something that just got smashed by this deal. Well, historically, the S&P 500, the 1 year return after a bear market down is 41.38%. That's average. All right. Lowest was at 23%. The highest was right after the financial crisis at 63%. Maybe it was 68. I might be off 68%. I have to look back at my charts. But anyways, the encouragement for that is like, listen, the rebound it should be good. On averages, it should come back really well based off that. And then for people who are like, maybe you're in a great spot and you don't know what to do. Well, now's the time to dip your toe in the water because if you can do something, I want that. And so those are times where like, okay. And those are for the people who have been built, for a great spot. And I always tell people that, especially during bad times, stay liquid for 3 to 6 months. Keep that kind of money in your bank for how much savings, right? To have.
Yeah. And that's so handy. I actually, with I don't want to stop you, but real quick, I want to speak to that for anybody, even if you're young, even for single parents. I was able to build up about 10,000 in savings. And when I had my brain injury, I had months where I couldn't work. And if I hadn't have saved, it wouldn't have been a good spot for me. And we had to make other sacrifices financially. But if you say, well, I can't because I'm a single mom, I'm a single dad, I'm so young. If you want it, you can make it happen. And it will require discipline and sacrifice, but it's worth it. So I just want to echo what you said about that.
It's huge. It's huge. And there's a plethora of tools that you can use in the financial world. But that's one of them. It's like, okay, let's build an emergency stash and then we'll go past that. And so this is in this time where I talk about prospering during winter, because it's a matter of when winter comes, not if it does, right? I buy hats in the winter because summer's coming back and people are going to buy them. Okay. Yeah. So it's the same thought process is everything ebbs and flows and goes through peaks and valleys. And so, all right, when you're in the valley, have you prepared for those down times where when this opportunity comes, it doesn't mean you take every single one, but when one opportunity comes and it fits you, can you take it? And so if you're prepared for that, you can grab it. And when you come out of these people, this is where people have made massive lives for themselves.
Yeah, gains.
Yeah.
Well, in peaks and valleys, and we're getting close to 30 minutes. So I just want to say, if anyone has questions for Corey, throw them in the comments below. Thanks for everyone that's been joining. But let's talk about the peaks and valleys in life real quick. And I know for you just had some struggles. You weren't just a football player. You wrestled as well. But what were some of those for you in life, and what encouragement would you want to end with today for people? As I know some people still just really struggle when things are uncertain, but you and I both have a hope in the God of the universe who is in control of all things.
I tell you, it's transition is where people struggle. It's where people fall. You talk track, right? What happens? What's the most dangerous place? Are you talking about the relay race? What's the most dangerous part in the race? The handoff.
Yeah.
Right? And so what happens? We might be running the perfect race and the last handoff gets fumbled and we just messed this whole thing up. Well, that's why you're working through. That's why you keep practicing through this. Why you're anticipating. You practice so many handoffs, so many transition times, and so you can execute it when the time really needs to come. And so this is where people struggle. And I would encourage you through this. A big piece for me was when first time I ever read Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and soul. Lean not on your own understanding. First time I ever read that, it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I was dealing with not being a football player anymore, and my brother losing his son, and my brother was my best friend. And so watching him go through this, I wanted to control the world. And fine, you don't want to do this, I'll do it. And a degree of me still really appreciates and respects that. But if you have your faith and you believe in God and you really submit it to that, and you're like, I accept that in my life, you realize that you're not him.
Yeah.
Right? When you realize that you're not him, you realize that you don't have full control over everything. You realize, okay, he's for me. He's not against me. I can go out and I know he's going to catch me if I got something that goes wrong or something that falls in my life or through this transition. He's going to help me go. Okay. But it's up to me to go get it. And here's what I would love, the piece of encouragement I would love to leave with people is preemptively decide what you are about. Decide what you're going to be about in this life, because at some point, bad things are going to come. And when it comes and somebody bumps into you on the subway or somebody bumps into you on the sidewalk and nasty Corey comes out instead of somebody who's like, shows the love of Christ and shows the light of the world and shows these good things about it, that's going to invite somebody into my life in a big way. And typically, and listen, I'm not talking, I don't want to like pander. I don't know what the right word is, right? But typically somebody who's inviting like that gets some pretty amazing opportunities. And that's, I tell you what, when you start acting with that kind of light, with that kind of love, with that kind of anticipation, doesn't mean you're just this fruity tooty guy all the time who's like, I love you to everybody. Okay. Be real with who you are. Right. But if when these bad times hit, and I know I can get ticked off and fly off the handle, but I know God has called me to be a leader in this community. And if I don't fly off the handle and say, you're good, man, don't worry about it. You know, you didn't mean that, whatever. And we strike up a conversation. Now I have an opportunity to have an influence on that person's life.
You open the door.
And that has influenced not just that person's life, but the potential to reach my kids that are growing up in this community. And that's why I love, you know, I do a lot of speaking gigs, but around locally here, I do them free. Why? Because I want the people that are in my neighborhood to be affected. I want my daughter to be affected by them because I can't control everybody else.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm glad that you do that. Hey, we have one question I do want to jump into. Someone said, what is your favorite, let me go back to it. What is your favorite stock to invest in?
Favorite stock to invest in? Well, like, I can't technically, this is a regulated industry like crazy, so I can't give recommendations over live like this.
Okay.
But there's a lot of good things, right? There's I mean, positive. I mean, you've seen Amazon pop off like crazy. They dip for a minute and jump right back to record heights for themselves. But if you got a question, you're gonna have to message me separately. We'll have a separate conversation about that.
All right, there's a better way. How about this? What is the best way for someone to reach you? That's probably the better answer that we can give them right now.
Well, if you're especially right here on Instagram, follow and DM me right here at Corey Proctor, or you can reach out. I have my site, my speaking site, CoreyProctor.com. My financial business is ProCapitalTX.com. That's my company. And so those are some great ways to reach out. Let's reach out, question. We'll get on the phone and talk, whatever you need. I'll help you out through whatever that is.
I'm very consulting. Thank you. Thank you for asking that. And I just want to say, you just heard that. He has CoreyProctor.com. He is a man of multiple gifts and talents, speaks corporate, faith, sports teams. So you can book him on that if anybody's watched along the way. I know we've had a lot of people in and out. But go to CoreyProctor.com, find out what he is about. An amazing guy, husband, father, former NFL player, wealth of knowledge about wealth that we all heard, and an absolute inspiration and surprise. If you didn't hear the beginning, he's a drummer, so that was the fun fact of today. But thank you for joining. It was exciting. It was fun just to hear your background and your story and just even your journey to faith. I think that's really going to be encouraging to men, because I know not just women, but I think men get walls up and they're so hard to knock down. So praise for the Texas Ranger / Marlin who got you going to church and just really started to get you plugged in. And that's an encouragement too. If you're not plugged in, get plugged in and start the journey. So, Corey, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Maggie. Hey, happy Mother's Day, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Corey, have a great day.
You too, Maggie. We'll see you.